في المصري إن الناس يكون حرما. نعم. صلينا جمعا. عادة يعني واحد يصلي يعني منفردا والناس يقولون إليه حرما وهو يردد جمعا.
I always thought it was عشان يعني تصلي في الحرم سوا.
أيوة معا. ولكن عادة واحد يصلي منفردا. Somebody prays by themselves and he finishes praying, you say haraman, like may you make a prayer like that in the haram, and then he says jama'an, we'll make it together, but they usually don't say it when they already pray together. You see what I'm saying? Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulih al-kareem wa ba'd. We'll get started right away inshallah because we're a bit late. These hadith are really interesting, primarily because it's kind of hard to believe that you have an entire chapter dedicated to the leaning or the ittikah of the Prophet ﷺ. You know, this was one of those chapters that when I first read it with teachers, I thought, is that significant enough to document? You know, but this is just how closely they're watching the Prophet ﷺ. Now, I don't think there's ever been another human being who's been documented so closely that people have a chapter of like traditions related to how they leaned. Like this is the ittikat, it's like the leaning of the Prophet, which is like, you know, we can laugh at that a little bit. It's just like, wow, that's very detail oriented. It's like the chewing of Kinza. This is how she would chew her food. You know, it's like the leaning of the Prophet ﷺ. Okay. So the first hadith, عن أنس أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم كان شاكيا فخرج يتوكأ على أسامة بن زيد وعليه ثوب قطري قد توشح به فصلى بهم. On the authority of Anas, who reported, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was ill, and he came out while he was leaning on Usama bin Zayd and wearing a qitri garment, a garment that was manufactured in the area, the region of Qatar, that he had thrown on loosely. And then he led them in prayer. You know, there's a lot of hadith about the final moments of the life of the Prophet ﷺ. And it's interesting that in this hadith, he comes out and he's leaning on Usama bin Zayd. Now, I don't want to go off on an unnecessary tangent, but I think it's significant to mention that Usama bin Zayd was very close to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. And his father, Zayd ibn al-Haritha, was also very close to the Prophet ﷺ. And, you know, it's worth mentioning that both he and his father were very dark in complexion. Usama bin Zayd was very dark in complexion, and Zayd ibn al-Haritha, they were very dark in complexion. And the Prophet ﷺ, we know the story, and I don't want to give too much background so that we get lost in the tangential, but the Prophet had actually claimed Zayd as a son, you know, because when he married Khadija, radiallahu anha, and at that time, of course, I mean, it upsets our sensibilities. Mine too. Human enslavement was something that was practiced regularly. It wasn't, you know, in fact, some people say that when the Quran was revealed, there wasn't really an alternative in the world to traditions of human enslavement, right? So Zayd ibn al-Haritha was owned by Khadija, and she gave him to the Prophet ﷺ as a wedding gift. Right? And the Prophet ﷺ, he would serve the Prophet ﷺ, and the Prophet in his generosity said, you're not my servant, you're my son. You know, that's just the relationship they had. You know, you're not my servant, you're my son. And then because he had a greater freedom of movement, he was able to kind of move about society more freely. You know, he was freed from bondage. Someone from his family, from his tribe, his qabila, they recognized him. And they informed his father that I found your son, right? Because Zayd had been taken at that time, there were two ways that one could become enslaved. One was to be a prisoner of war in a military conflict. The other was just to be captured, that somebody would just, raid and just grab children or women, just capture them. And Zayd was just captured. But after he was captured, he was sold into slavery. And so someone said, I found your son. And his father said, I thought that my son was, irretrievably gone or dead. And so his father came immediately to Mecca to claim Zayd, like, this is my son. And his father was a fair man. He said, look, maybe you paid some price. Whatever you paid, I'm willing to double it. Whatever you paid for my son, I'm willing to double it. Just release him into my custody. And the Prophet ﷺ was noticeably saddened by this because he had grown a great affection for Zayd. And the Prophet told his father, this is your son. You don't have to pay me any money. If he wants to go with you, he can go with you. It's fine. And Zayd actually told his father, Dad, I love you, but I want to stay here with Muhammad. He's my father. And his father turned around and departed in tears, right? And, such was the closeness of the Prophet ﷺ and Zayd ibn al-Haritha. That closeness was challenged when the Prophet ﷺ suggested that Zayd ibn al-Haritha marry Zainab bint Jahsh. Now they're coming from two different worlds. Zayd ibn al-Haritha is a former bondsman, right? Which is I think a more respectable way of saying enslaved, right? He's a former bondsman. You can imagine what that entails in terms of his status in the society. You can also imagine what that entails in terms of maybe his manner. Maybe his manner is a little more what we call boorish, B-O-O-R-I-S-H. He's a little rough around the edges, so as to speak. And Zainab bint Jahsh was Nabila. She was highborn. She was, I guess she would have been kind of the Arab equivalent of an aristocrat. She was born into a very wealthy, very powerful family. And the Prophet ﷺ thought that if these two people got married, this would be a great demonstration of how Islam does away with social distinctions. So he encouraged them to marry. This would be great, a former slave and an aristocrat. Islam is really working, right? And Zainab reluctantly agreed to it. Zayd reluctantly agreed to it. Both of them had some reservations, kind of like, this is not really my type, but we'll go with it because you suggested it, Ya Rasulullah. The marriage didn't work out. Zayd would come to the Prophet ﷺ and he would complain about his wife. And his complaint was, she thinks she's better than me. Tatawala alayya. Like she looks down on me. I'm unable to command her respect in the way that I want to command the respect of my wife. And the Prophet ﷺ would say to him, Ittaqillah wa amsik bi zawjik. He would just say, fear Allah and remain married, right? Because this is also a learning experience for the Prophet ﷺ, right? He would say to him, fear Allah and keep at it. All of us that have been married or are married, we've been given speeches like that. It gets tough sometimes. Just stay the course. And for both of them, it just became unbearable. Zainab didn't want to be in the relationship. Zayd didn't want to be in the relationship. And Allah revealed verses that, subhanAllah, Allah revealed verses that effectively announced that Zainab was now married to the Prophet ﷺ. Now, this Aisha radiallahu anha, she said this was the hardest day in the life of the Prophet ﷺ because there was no precedent among the Arab that a man would marry the former wife of his son. Assalamu alaikum, assalamu alaikum salam. There was that was something they regarded as an anathema. Like, how can you marry her? She's been married to your son. That's culturally no bueno. That's culturally taboo. And then Allah revealed the verses that your foster children are not like your blood children. They're not, the rulings related to the foster children are not the same as those related to the blood children. And then Allah Ta'ala said effectively, you call them your sons, but they are not your sons, right? So that, this marriage between Zainab and the Prophet ﷺ was halal. It also, one of the profound lessons that we learn from this story is that even when two people have faith, Zainab had faith, radiallahu anha. She was one of the most charitable people of the Medinan community, and she was one of the most prayerful. And Zayd ibn al-Haritha, he was Zayd ibn al-Haritha. He had faith, but compatibility is still important. Two people that come from different worlds, even if both of them have iman, both of them are good people, but if the expectation materially or culturally or behaviorally, if the expectations are different, that can still make it very difficult for two people to be in relation with each other, right? Now, Usama bin Zayd, after Zayd ibn al-Haritha divorced from Zainab, right? He ended up marrying, Barakah. He ended up marrying Barakah, who was a wet nurse of the Prophet ﷺ. Lots of fada'il, lots of beautiful characteristics mentioned about Barakah, particularly her eloquence. She was a very, very eloquent speaker. And the offspring of Barakah and Zayd ibn al-Haritha is Usama bin Zayd. Now, the thing about Barakah, very dark in complexion. Zayd ibn al-Haritha, very dark in complexion. Usama bin Zayd, presumably, very dark in complexion. So when they said Zayd was Hibbu Rasulillahi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he was the beloved of the Prophet alayhi wasallam. I think it's important sometimes to point out that this was a man of a very dark hue. And Usama bin Zayd was Hibbu Rasulillahi alayhi wasallam, the beloved of the Messenger of Allah alayhi wasallam. So the Prophet alayhi wasallam, in some of his final moments, right, like before his demise, he's exiting his apartment and he's leaning on who? Usama bin Zayd, this young man. And Anas, narrating the hadith, he said that the Prophet had a pitri, he had a garment that was manufactured or that was produced in Qatar on him, tawashahabi, just loosely thrown on him, which was documented because the Prophet ﷺ was always noted for having been very comfortable in his clothing and in his appearance, but he would normally carry himself with a little more decorum than that. And that's why I wore a t-shirt today, to reflect what I'm not. he would carry himself with a little more decorum than that. So they know the fact that his clothes were tawasha habib, they were like a little bit, what's the word I'm looking for? Relaxed. It's like if you see someone and maybe at the most you see them with the top button unfastened. But if you see them one day and they look really tired and they look really beleaguered and really worn out, and you see them like 3 buttons undone, and you see them with like their hair kind of a mess, and it's like, that this is not like them. So these details are being documented because they realize that the Prophet ﷺ is this is his final hour, right? This is the time when he is about to pass away. عن الفضل ابن عباس رضي الله عنهما قال دخلت على رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم في مرضه الذي توفي فيه وعلى رأسه عصابة صفراء فسلمت عليه فقال يا فضل قلت لبيك يا رسول الله قال أشدد بهذه العصابة رأسي قال فعلت ثم قعد فوعد كفه على منكبي ثم قام فدخل في المسجد وفي الحديث قصة. This is on the authority of Fadl ibn Abbas. Now, Fadl ibn Abbas is like the classic case of someone who is overshadowed by a famous sibling, right? His brother is Abdullah ibn Abbas, who is much more prominent than he. But Fadl was very close to the Prophet ﷺ. You know, Abbas was the uncle of the Prophet ﷺ, right? So when you're talking about Abdullah ibn Abbas, Fadl ibn Abbas, these are all Ahlul Bayt. These are the people of the family of the Prophet ﷺ. But Fadl, you don't hear much about him. You hear much more about Abdullah ibn Abbas, right? He's Tarjuman al-Quran, Hibr al-Ummah, you know, the principal interpreter of the Quran, like the rabbi of this Ummah. Fadl, it's very hard to find biographical information about Fadl, but one story about Fadl ibn Abbas that is just awesome. That is just awesome. That when the Prophet ﷺ was making Hijjat al-Wada', was making the farewell pilgrimage, Fadl ran up to his camel. Fadl was a young man, maybe in his teens. And the Prophet, you know, commanded the camel to kneel, and he took Fadl and he put him up on the camel. And so the Prophet ﷺ is demonstrating for the people the manasik of Hajj, like the Hajj rituals, and Fadl is sitting right in front of him. And as the Prophet is showing the people the rituals of Hajj, a beautiful young woman, and that's how she's described in the hadith, came to ask a question about Hajj. And Fadl was so taken by her beauty that he couldn't stop staring at her. Now, mind you, he's sitting in front of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. And the Prophet is just answering this woman's question about, this is how you make Hajj, you do this, you do that. And Fadl is like, and so the Prophet took his chin and just turned it away from her, like, this is probably making her uncomfortable. And Fadl went back like this. And the Prophet just took his chin the second time and said, like, and turned it the other way. Fadl even did it a third time, like, I cannot take my eyes off this woman. And the Prophet took his chin and moved like to the other side. Later on, some people that were watching from a distance, they said, Ya Rasulullah, we saw that you had the young boy on the camel and you were turning his chin. Is it that when you go onto the plain of Arafah, you go like this? Like you have to do something with your face? Because we saw you moving his face. They thought that maybe this was a part of making Hajj, that you have to go and then you have to move your face. And the Prophet smiled and he said, no, there were just two young people and I wanted to protect them so that shaitan wouldn't come between them. There's so much I love about the hadith. Right? There's so much I love about this hadith. But one thing I love is that, and then the Prophet explained to Fadl that when you happen upon someone unexpectedly, the first glance that you take at them is pardoned. Like that, there's no sin, there's no misdeed in that first glance when your eyes fall upon someone. This is just a human thing. Someone enters the room, you look at them. And you might even hold the glass for a moment, just registering maybe who they are, where you know them from. You look at them. He said that is pardoned. But the second glance, the third glance are from shaitan, right? So there's an interesting religious principle there about ghad al-basr, about lowering the gaze, that first glance when you enter a room is like this, you know, that's normal. It's not, I think some people mistake lowering the gaze for walking around with your eyes perpetually downcast. Like, in fact, I think even though I know some people intend to respect women's space by lowering their gaze, right? If you appear to be too uncomfortable, what it conveys to that woman is that your presence here is a nuisance. You're being, look at all of this contortion. Look at what you're putting me through. See, and I think brothers don't see that. If you're like, Yes, sister, the sister's prayer area is, if you go over there, it's through the back. What this is saying to her is, dang, my being here is making you that uncomfortable? I just won't come. I'll stay home. I'll go somewhere different. Like learning how to respect space, because you have no right to gaze at that woman. To do so would make her uncomfortable, but not in a way that makes her feel that she's causing you distress. You see, not like in a way that makes her feel like you're causing me, oh, goodness, if I known you were coming, I'd probably want sunglasses. I mean, it's like, it's too much, right? It's too much. So the Prophet ﷺ is telling Fadl, the first gaze like that, that's okay, right? That's okay. When you returned your eyes to her a second time and a third time, this is from shaitan, right? This is from shaitan. The second thing I really love about that story about Fadl ibn Abbas is that the Prophet ﷺ was amazingly considerate of kind of the energy of young people. Many young people expressed that they had kind of uncontrollable sexual desire, and the Prophet ﷺ never really like criminalized them. He never said like, that's disgusting, you sick person, you need help. He would explain to them. So like the young man who came and said, Ya Rasulullah, abihli, make permissible for me fornication, because it's something I enjoy. First off, you think, man, that was a bold guy. You know what I'm saying? That's a bold guy. The second thing you think is that it wasn't just that he was bold. It was something he must have seen in the Prophet ﷺ that gave him confidence that this is somebody that I can talk to, I can be real with. So he said, like, can you give me a special permission to have, premarital relations? Because I mean, it's kind of like my thing. It's what I do. Yeah, that's what I'm into, right? And the Prophet ﷺ said, do you have no, first he said to him, come closer. Ta'al, come closer. Come closer. Which, look, I mean, everybody who knows me, they know I love hadith. I can read hadith. Anybody who comes to me and says, let's read together, I always want to read hadith. Let's read hadith. I love reading the Quran too, but I love reading hadith, right? The first thing the Prophet said to him was, Ta'al, come close. Commentators say so as not to embarrass the young boy, even though the young man is clearly embarrassing himself. Like he doesn't feel any shame about what he's saying. He's telling the Prophet, I like premarital sex. That's what I'm into. But the Prophet in responding still says, come close, come close. I said, man, if one of my elders said that to me and after I said something like that, I would have think it was gonna hit me. Come close, come here, come here. My grandma said, come here, look close. Look. He goes, oh, and she wore a ring on every finger. You getting all that. Right? Come close. And he asked the boy, he said, do you have a mother? The young man said, yes. Do you have sisters? Yeah. Do you have aunts? Yes. He said, would you like it if somebody did that to your aunt? Would you like it if someone did that to your mother? Would you like it if someone did that to your sister? Now look at the difference in the context. I could literally write an article on this, because to them, what made sex immoral was that two people would engage sex without any clear-cut responsibilities toward each other or toward the children that might be produced from that relationship. So when the Prophet was asking him, would you like it if someone did that to your mother? He mean, would you like it if a man that had no responsibility towards your mother, a man that was not prepared to care for the child if your mother became pregnant, had a relationship with your mother? Would you like that? And the boy is like, no, I wouldn't like that. Would you like it for your sister? No, I wouldn't like that. Would you like it for your aunt? No, I wouldn't like that. Other people have aunts. Other people have sisters. Other people have mothers. Meaning the women that you do this to, they're also mothers, aunts, sisters, daughters. So be considerate of them like you would want people to be considerate of your relatives. Now, what's tripped out about it is one of my friends in Boston said that a young man came into his office one day, and the young man said, Imam, I'm religious, but my girlfriend and I, we're adults. We're adults. If we want to have a physical relationship, what's wrong with that? He said this to him, we're adults. She's an adult, I'm an adult. If we want to, if this is something she wants to do, I want to do, what's wrong with that? And my friend said, working as the Imam, he said, this is an opportunity for me to use the hadith. He thought this is like a pitch right down the plate. I'm going to use the hadith of the Prophet without saying, yeah, this is the hadith of the Prophet. I'm going to just use it. So he said, I said to the young man, do you have a mother? And I said, yeah. You got sisters? Yeah. Aunts? Yeah. Would you like it if somebody did that with your mother, your sister, your aunt? He said, the young man said, if that's what they want. And he said that he realized in that moment how different the context we live in is. Because in our context, what makes sex moral is consent. As long as the parties are consenting and they're doing so without coercion, the sex is moral. That's it. That's it. Whereas for us, no. It is two people can consent to something that is immoral. They both can be consenting adults, but if they don't have a clear relationship toward each other, and they're not clearly prepared to deal with the child that might be conceived as a result of this relationship, it's still immoral, right? And for us, that clear relationship with each other is through marriage. But in this time, the popular moralities, as long as they're consenting adults, it's cool. So he said, when the guy said, if that's what they want, he said, like, the air was just let out of his, he was like, you weren't supposed to say that. And then he said that he laughed and the guy laughed. And he just explained to the guy, like, look, let's talk to your parents, man. Let's talk to her parents. Let's get this thing. Let's do this. If you guys want to be together, there's commitment. Let's get married. If the issue is money, or we'll have to figure that out, but let's get married. But that story always makes me laugh, mashallah. So here, Father said that he went to see the Messenger of Allah, والسلام, during the illness from which he was to pass. And he was wearing a yellow piece of cloth around his head, just like to provide him with some relief. I greeted him, whereupon he said, "O Fadl," to which I replied, "Labayk, at your service, O Messenger of Allah." He said, "Tighten this cloth around my head." And so I did. Then he sat up and placed the palm of his blessed hand on my shoulder and stood up and entered the mosque. There's a story behind this narration. This was the narration, and there's some different accounts of this narration. The Prophet ﷺ at this point had become really weak and didn't even feel that he could lead the people in prayer effectively. So he said, as he came out to pray, he told the people beforehand, Abu Bakr, you lead the prayer. And Aisha, radiallahu anha, the daughter of Abu Bakr, she said, Ya Rasulullah, it should be somebody other than my dad, because my father cries too much when he prays and you can't even hear the recitation. Which just shows you the riqatul qalb, like this is Sayyidina Abu Bakr. She said, Ya Rasulullah, you should choose somebody else to lead the prayer. Because every time my father leads prayer, he cries so loudly that you can barely hear what's being recited. And then the Prophet ﷺ said, no, Abu Bakr should lead the prayer. Abu Bakr should lead the prayer. It should be Abu Bakr. And she kind of, asserted herself again, like, no, it shouldn't be Abu Bakr. And he said, no. And then the Prophet said, like, this is, and again, these statements must be understood in context. This is the Prophet ﷺ on his deathbed, right? You know, trying to elect Sayyidina Abu Bakr for this kind of very symbolic passing of the torch. This is for you. Sayyidina Aisha radiallahu anha is just giving him some pushback. And the Prophet gets frustrated and he said, this is worse than what the women did to Yusuf. Like this is, man, look, I know what I'm saying. I know I want Abu Bakr to lead the prayer. And so finally they tell Sayyidina Abu Bakr to lead the prayer. And as soon as Sayyidina Abu Bakr hears the Prophet ﷺ approaching, he moves, you know, which is when you think about just how he could sense, because there's no indication that he looked back. You know, some people say that people like, they all gasped. They were praying, but when they felt the presence of the Prophet ﷺ coming to the saf, there was a huge like he's here, right? So Sayyidina Abu Bakr just automatically just stepped back, like, and they were in the third rak'ah, but he automatically just stepped. They were praying Dhuhr. He automatically just stepped back, you know, right? Or they're praying Maghrib, and he automatically just stepped back. And the Prophet ﷺ nudged Abu Bakr to go forward, to say, no, you go, like, you go ahead. And Sayyidina Abu Bakr led the Prophet ﷺ in prayer, which is a great distinction of his. How many people can say that they led the Messenger of Allah ﷺ in prayer? Right? So the Prophet prayed behind Sayyidina Abu Bakr, which ended up being symbolically very rich. Because when they're talking about who is the Khalifa, and you know, this moment that the Prophet came out and witnessed Abu Bakr leading the community, that becomes a very strong indication that he is the rightful leader of the community. Of course, our brothers of the Shia, they have a different narration of this story. Right? They have a different narration of the story. And their narration of the story is that the Prophet was trying to elect Sayyidina Ali to lead the people in prayer, but everybody was hiding it, and nobody would no one would implement the order, and they, you know, he was saying Ali should do it, and they were hiding it, which when you think about it, it's just such a bizarre thing. It's just, of course I have great respect for our brothers of the Shia, but it's just a strange take on the story. It's a strange take on the story. What time is it? Okay, Bismillah. Bismillah. باب ما جاء في صفة أكل رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. What has been narrated concerning the manner in which the Messenger of Allah ﷺ ate food. So you guys thought I was joking when I said the chewing of Sister Kenza. No, that was serious. Right. عن ابن لكعب بن مالك عن أبيه أن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم كان يلعق أصابعه ثلاثا. On the authority of Ka'ab. Oh, okay, that's what I didn't see. عن سعيد ابن إبراهيم عن ابن لكعب ابن مالك. So on the authority of Sa'id ibn Ibrahim, on the authority of one of the sons of Ka'b ibn Malik, on the authority of his father who reported the Prophet ﷺ would lick his blessed fingers 3 times after eating. Now, there's an important distinction we have to make here. It's an important distinction that we have to make here. All right. I remember I was in London, and I was I know this hadith, right? I know this hadith. And I was in London, and I was I gave a lecture in East London at Sheikh Babakir's, at his daughter's place called Rumi's Cave. And it was good. It was my first time in East London. It was nice. You know, I gave a lecture, and then afterward, some food was served. So I ate, and then I guess I called myself implementing the sunnah. I licked my fingers, and Sheikh Babakir said, Mishkila ya habibi. Not like that, you know. Not that's not decorous. That's not mannerable. That the Prophet ﷺ, first off, he would eat with the middle finger, the index finger, and the thumb. Right. So he didn't eat with the whole hand. You know, in some cultures, people eat with they eat with their hand, but they eat with the whole hand. They eat with the whole hand. He didn't eat with the whole hand. He ate with the middle, the index, and the thumb. What's important to note here in terms of context is that they say maybe 65, 70% of the diet of the Prophet ﷺ was dates. Different kinds of dates. Tamar, balah, right? Different, dried dates, ripe dates, different kinds of dates, right? Another thing that Muslims find shocking, the Prophet ﷺ never ate rice a day in his life. Some Muslims are like, no, you get out of here. He never ate rice a day in his life. That was not one of the staples of the Arabs of the Arabian Peninsula. So mostly the diet of the Prophet ﷺ consisted of dates, different pieces of cut fruit, and bread with soup. Bread with idam, like dal. Like, dal chawal among Desis, but just the dal. You guys didn't know I knew stuff like that, did you? Yeah. Surprise you every day. I used to go to an Indian madrasa. I used to sit at the Dastarkhan and eat dal chawal and drink doodh. Yeah, of course. And I understand a lot of Urdu that's said to me. Just the commands, idra'u, pedal, just the commands that I said to you. Read, come here, badmash, bad guy, jungly, wild guy, Khanjuz, selfish guy, you know what I'm saying? But mostly his diet was dates, cut fruit, grains, different kinds of grains, barley and stuff like that, and bread soaked in like different soups. That was a meal for them. Like bread, like leavened bread soaked in like a soup. That was like a whole meal. And I remember once a person said to me, if you want to know the difference between the symbols of the Sunnah and the actual substance of the Sunnah, all you have to look at is Ramadan. When we come in and we get that little pre-meal, before we pray, like they call the adhan, and we get like the banana, the dates, the little pakora. For us, this is just an appetizer. That was the iftar. That was their iftar. That was the iftar. That was about the size of the iftar that they ate. For us, that's just like a warm-up meal. That's like, and sometimes we go hard on that. I see brothers 7 pakoras, you know what I'm saying? I mean, a whole plate of dates. And I'm just like, this is before Maghrib. Then after Maghrib, bowl of cereal, that's for the breakfast that I miss. Club sandwich, that's for the lunch. The prime rib, that's for the, even when Ghazali said, don't turn the Shahr al-Siyam ila Shahr al-Ta'at. Don't turn it from the month of fasting to the month of food. You know what I'm saying? It's supposed to reduce the intake, right? He said, don't go by and make back, don't go back and make up for everything you missed, every meal you missed. I was like, okay. Normally in the morning I would have ate pancakes, so I'm gonna start with that. Then I probably would have had pizza for lunch, so then I'm gonna have some pizza. You know what I mean? So I gotta go back and make up for everything I missed, right? But Sheikh Babakar, he said the Prophet would eat with the middle, the index, and the thumb, and just would lick this digit of his hand like this. Just lick the digits of the fingers, not putting the whole finger in. Finger looking good, or something like a KFC situation, or something like that. You know what I mean? I love that chicken from Popeyes situation. You know what I mean? We're not doing that. It's just Lick the fingers. What's that?
So sometimes you can help it, but you
So yes. No. But this is the thing. That's a different culture. I get it though. I think what Sheikh was saying to me, know that the Prophet ﷺ never sat in the company of people and put his whole hand in his mouth. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. No, it wasn't. It wasn't like that. It was more just this digit of the hand, the top digit of the fingers. MashaAllah. Same thing. عن حديث 138 عن أنس قال كان النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم إذا أكل طعاما لعق أصابعه الثلاثة. On the authority of Anas, who reported when the Prophet ﷺ would eat food, he would lick his blessed fingers 3 times. He would lick his 3 blessed fingers. So again, these fingers, index, middle, thumb. Index, middle, thumb, right? عن أبي جحيفة قال النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أما أنا فلا آكل متكئا. On the authority of Abu Juhayfa, who reported, the Prophet ﷺ said, as for me, I don't eat while reclining. Now this hadith is very important because we see the language of hadith. Whenever the Prophet ﷺ says, as for me, he's saying this is his preference, but it's not haram. But he's saying this is my preference. I don't eat while reclining. The Prophet ﷺ thought that there was something particularly arrogant about that gesture. It was just something that he did not like to eat like as the person is like laying back like that. Like he just did not, there was something that he did not do. It was something he did not like. And that's so he said, Amma ana fala akulu muttaki'an. As for me, I don't eat while reclining. I don't eat like that, right? So if I'm eating, they said the Prophet ﷺ, his manner of eating and what he ate was always as one of the people, I have some different ideas about this. This concept is, because on the one hand, Allah Ta'ala tells us to eat from the halal and the tayyib, eat from the lawful and eat from the pure. And in a context like ours, in which there is so much malnutritious food available, you almost have to become very intentional to eat good food. At the same time, I don't think it's not prophetic in spirit to become like an inspector of food that's served to you. Like if someone offers you food in generosity and you're explaining how you only eat cage-free, grass-fed, free-range chickens, there's something about that. Now I get it. The person that does monitor their food in that way is doing so to realize a Quranic commandment. Eat from the halal and the tayyib, eat the halal and the pure. And they're just trying to ensure that they eat from the pure, right? They're not trying to be difficult or trying to be, finicky or trying to be hard to please. It's just like, I don't eat fruit that isn't organic or something like that. At the same time, you see in the Prophet ﷺ, this very, this marked humbleness of spirit, that like when he ate and what he ate, he did not require anything above what was normal, right? He didn't require anything above, like if, there were poor companions of the Prophet ﷺ that would invite him to their homes for dinner. And he would go and he would eat with them. One occasion that, always tickles me is that some people, and this was certainly not the food of anyone that had means, they would eat lizards. They would grill the lizards, meshwi, yani. They would grill the lizards and they would eat the lizards. I'm thinking, how much meat is on a lizard? I don't know, you're right. And the Prophet ﷺ went to eat with some companions of his, radiallahu anhum jami'an, and they served him a lizard, a grilled lizard. And the Prophet ﷺ leaned back from the plate. And he said, as for me, I don't care for lizard. I normally don't eat lizards. And everybody stopped eating and looked and said, like, is something wrong with this? And he said, no. If you enjoy it, you can eat it. And they said, okay. Which also too, I think is expressive of, there was, even though you're talking about the messenger of God, this is something that keeps me awake at night. We naturally want to emulate our heroes, all of us. I mean, I think that's a natural human. In fact, if you spend time with someone long enough, you'll start using the expressions that they use. You'll start gesticulating like they do. You'll start using, I'll never forget when I was in Egypt for so long, I started going like this. And I was thinking, yo, man, I don't even do that. Somebody would be talking, I wanted them to slow down. Happy. I spent so much time in Egypt, and I had an active life in Egypt. I'm going through the streets, getting on the bus, I'm going everywhere. That I started to say things like, yes, salam, Eda. You know what I mean? It's like, you know what I mean? And I could say it just like somebody just, Eda. Or I could say it like in wonderment, Eda. You know what I'm saying? Eda means like, what is this? Eda. Or you can say, Eda. What is this? You know what I'm saying? But so naturally, the people in the company of the best of creation wanted to emulate him. They wanted to be like the Prophet ﷺ, right? They wanted, if he was making wudu and some water came off his body, they wanted to get the water come off his body and put it on their bodies. If he was sweating, they wanted to take the sweat from his hair and perfume their homes with it. So that element is there. But then you also have this individuality. It wasn't like a cult leader and cult followers. They retain a lot of their individuality. They felt very comfortable retaining. So like in this story, they're eating the lizards. He stops. They look and they say like, look, first off, if God says we can't eat these lizards, we will stop. But if you're telling us this is just your taste, your preference, okay, that's cool. You don't like it, more for me. It's like, I'm always like fascinated by how they struck that balance. Like, I love you. I pattern my life after yours. I want to emulate you, but I'm very comfortable being me too. There's something like I eat things that you don't eat. Maybe I like to wear things that you don't wear. That's okay too. And I think that this is in a way what separates the Prophet ﷺ from every kind of megalomaniac cult leader. Because people like that, they don't allow anyone to have individuality. You see, it's like they want to look and they want to see themselves reflected back to them at all times, right? So it's like, I don't eat lizard, you don't eat lizard. I'm like this, you like this. I sit like this, you sit. I don't eat while reclining, you don't eat while reclining. Whereas the Prophet ﷺ said, "Amma ana fala akulu muttaki'an." As for me, I don't eat while reclining. But if that's something you like to do, you lay up with the husband and the husband feeds you grapes, that's your thing, that's your thing. I don't eat while reclining. I don't do that. Right? I find that balance is, even now, with sometimes these cults of personality around religious leaders, when people try to emulate the religious leader too closely in their dress or in their speech or in their manner, that always makes me a little bit uncomfortable. It's like, are you learning from her or him how to be the best you, or are you just learning how to be them? It's always like, and again, those two, I mean, they're related. They're related in some ways. Sometimes we are imitating people. Sometimes we are trying to bring out the best in ourselves. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. This is the same hadith that was mentioned before, but we'll read it for barakah. عن هشام بن عروة عن ابن لكعب بن مالك عن أبيه قال كان رسول الله عليه الصلاة والسلام يأكل بأصابعه الثلاث ويلعقهن. In the last hadith of the section, what time are we? Okay. Bismillah. And that hadith, of course, is the Prophet ﷺ would eat with his 3 blessed fingers and lick them. And then the last hadith, حدثنا مصعب ابن سليم قال سمعت أنس بن مالك يقول أوتي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم بتمر فرأيته يأكل وهو مقع من الجوع. On the authority of Anas ibn Malik, on the authority of Mus'ab ibn Sulaym, who reported, I heard Anas ibn Malik say, some dates were brought to the Messenger of Allah والسلام, and I saw him eating them while he was leaning back on something, min al-ju', out of hunger, right? So this hadith, there's an art to hadith. Hadith is saying, yes, the Prophet ﷺ has like regular practices and standards, but sometimes, like Amir just said, you can't help it. Sometimes you have things like that, like you can't help it. So they always, this is what I love about our religion, is that when compiling hadith, they'll always end the chapter with a hadith like that to let you know, sometimes you can't help it. So he was saying, look, Mus'ab ibn Sulaym said that he heard Anas ibn Malik say that once the Prophet was so hungry, like he was like exhausted and he was hungry, somebody brought him some dates and he started eating the dates while he was reclining. Right? But he said what? Min al-ju', out of hunger. He did it because he was hungry. Right? That wasn't his regular practice, is that he ate while sitting up. But this time he was so hungry that he did it while hungry. Like stuff like that, I think it cautions us, it very subtly cautions us against becoming too robotic with our manners. I remember reading this etiquette book written in the late 19th century. And the etiquette book said, if a man and a woman are walking down the street, it is good manners that the woman be on the inside of the man and the man be closer to the roadway, right? Because of the horse, some mud, some manure, some water could splash up, anything happens. The idea is that it is more becoming of the man to walk where there's a greater potential for danger. He's supposed to walk on the outside. But they said, but if taking a journey and making turns would necessitate the man to keep repositioning himself, to get back on the outside, get back on the outside, get back on the outside, then it's better just to walk down the street. Because at that point, it's become too robotic. The spirit of what's being done has been lost. The grace, the elegance of what's being done. So if a man is if he can naturally pull it off, where it's like, he's walking down the street and she's here, he's closer to the street. But if when they turn this way, they turn right, he has to go. So, and then they turn, he has to go. It's too much. It's too much. It's too much. It's like, okay, we get the spirit of what's happening here. But at this point, it's become too contrived. Like we're trying too hard to do this now, right? They said at that point, he should just walk down the street because it's becoming an inconvenience. What is supposed to be etiquette is becoming inconvenience. Maybe they're having a conversation, he keeps moving to the side, and like, man, just walk. Alhamdulillah, we know that you know your manners. Alhamdulillah. But let's just walk down the street because we're making a lot of turns and I'm like midpoint and then you're like going behind me to get back on this side. Again. Too much, too much. When we have hadith like this, I think it says like, yeah, the Prophet ﷺ had ways that he customarily did things. But if he was tired, exhausted, and somebody brought him some dates, he didn't say, wait a minute, you guys know I said I never eat while reclining, right? No, I was like, come on, man, this is real life. It's like, normally I don't eat while reclining, but I am completely exhausted today, right? Right. So, and then also too, it reminds us that, before judging or assessing someone's situation, make sure you're not looking at an extenuating circumstance. Like maybe you see somebody doing something, and before you're about to admonish them about it, you have to know that that's not my norm. It was just an extenuating circumstance. It was, I don't normally do that, but what you were observing was something completely out of the norm, right? I think that's very important. So the next chapter is Babu ma ja'a fi sifati khubzi Rasulillahi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What has been narrated concerning the description of the bread of the Prophet alayhi wasallam, and I can assure you, it was nothing like Jimmy John's. Very, very, we call it Aish Beladi, very simple leavened bread. Aish Beladi is very simple bread, right? MashaAllah. Wow, beautiful hadith. We'll just read one just for barakah. We won't go into the chapter, we don't have time. عن عائشة رضي الله عنها أنها قالت ما شبع آل محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم من خبز الشعير يومين متتابعين حتى قبض رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. That Aisha, she said, the family of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ never ate their fill of barley bread 2 days in a row up until the soul of the Messenger of Allah was taken. That is the difficulty. That is the great financial hardship in which they lived, not because they had to, but because they voluntarily gave away what they had. Right? And she said the family of the Prophet ﷺ did not eat their fill of bread 2 days straight. I mean, she can't remember 2 days that the family of the Prophet ﷺ ate their fill of bread. Like, if we had bread on Monday, we definitely didn't have bread Tuesday. Right? Our fill, to have enough to we are completely, ma shabi'a al-Muhammadin, we are completely full. Did not happen, alayhi salatu. And when you think about that, I mean, the Prophet ﷺ was effectively, at the end of his life, the ruler of Arabia. Effectively, he never claimed to be a king or anything like that, but he was effectively the ruler of Arabia. And for someone in that position to not ensure that their family is even eating their fill of a simple amenity, or a simple amenity was a bad word, a simple luxury like bread, just speaks to the humility of the Prophet ﷺ, that, there's not a bone in his body that seeks to use his position for worldly gain. It would be, even though in America, it's very impolite to talk about money, right? Which is one of the reasons why there's such great salary disparity between men and women, because we don't talk about money. You can work with somebody on a job 7 years, and you don't know they're making $30,000 more than you. You guys have been there for the same amount of time, because we just don't talk about those things. In cultures, and this is a weird stat I heard, in cultures where it is much less taboo to talk about salaries, there's much greater fairness in salaries. So like in China, it is very regular that somebody says, this is why I work, how much you make? America, it's unimaginable. It's like, hey, what do they pay you to do this? Excuse me, sir? Right? But I think that is like a culture of expediency in America, because this is a society of such great disparity. For the person that is the first year associate to hear that, the partner is making, 8 figures and he's slaving for 70,000, is like, I mean, it's unimaginable almost, right? But why did I mention that? Oh, Wallahu a'lam. No, but the Prophet ﷺ never sought to use his position for worldly gain. And in some cultures, that's why I mentioned it, when people are running for elected office, it is not considered impolite or rude or forward to ask, like, what are your, do you have any financial interest here? Like, the fact that Donald Trump was elected without submitting his taxes, even in America, that's unprecedented. And that really happened. It's unimaginable that a person could have a position of leadership and not disclose, like, well, this is financially, these are my interests, so that you will know if I appear to have a conflict of interest. You will know that if I'm, rubber stamping policies that benefit, my interest, this could be known to people, right? I mean, subhanAllah. And I think if people want to trust leadership, those are the things that they really want to know. Like how do you live? I remember I was watching when, not the current president of Iran, but the former president of Iran. He had a long name. Yeah, Ahmadinejad. When he was running for president, there was a woman, I saw this video. She said, where do you live? How much money do you have? What kind of car do you drive? And he said, yeah, I drive a 1978 Peugeot, and I live in this neighborhood, and this is what I do for a living. This is what I make. And she said, I said, okay. I said, in America, nobody would even ask a question like that. But she wanted to know, like, is your interest here the welfare of the people, or maybe you have another interest here, right? Which is, I think, something legitimate to ask in a less forward way. With the Prophet ﷺ, always completely transparent with his financial dealings. And that was one of the things that led to the great trust they had, that this is not about enriching the family of the Prophet ﷺ. Even now, the fiqh ruling still stands. And this is one of those rulings I'm like, wow, if somebody is from Ahlul Bayt, if somebody is a Sayyid, if somebody's from the family of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, they cannot receive zakah. You cannot pay your zakah to a person who is from the family of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ. You cannot do that. You can give them sadaqah, and you can give them hadayah, you can give them gifts, but you cannot give them zakah. If somebody's like, I'm a Sayyid, you cannot give them zakah, because the Prophet ﷺ wanted to make it very clear, this is not about enriching my family. There is no religious ruling that leads to people being obligated to enrich my family. That is not what this is about. MashaAllah. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين. ما شاء الله.